Thank you, John.
Yeah,
John, you
thank
can
you
just
very much.
John, just jump in whenever you want, dude. It's,
Yeah, John's going to be like the
yeah,
trance
you can
of
seriously.
climbing the ladder.
Oh, thank you. And by the way, I found the stream key link. I knew Wolf would know it.
Just in time.
All right, let me get on TVs. Someone link it to me. It's LB. What is it again? Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Okay, cool. Oh my god, it's actually gonna be nice not having to do anything for once. Except for the. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's why. Just jump in, John. Just join us.
For those of you who've just joined the stream, this is a kind of an impromptu moving of climbing the ladder. I've stolen the show. It's now on my channel.
Hostile
Essentially,
takeover.
yeah, pretty much. I'm now the majority shareholder of Climbing the Ladder LLC. And what's essentially happened is, for some reason, ChanmanV can't stream right now. Something's fucked up with his channel, so they're just borrowing my channel for a while. So if you happen to be watching and saying, what the hell is going on, that's why this is happening. You can calm the hell down, and I'm sure these guys will shuffle off once they're done with their talking.
Yep. Big thanks to you, TV.
Yeah, big thanks.
Saving
It's
eSports.
fine. Twitch and XSplit are a pain in the ass. We all know these things. So I believe ReDeYe was saying something along the lines of talk to people that you dislike and only trust certain opinions from those guys. So I think that's where you were on the conversation. So I'm gonna mute my mic. I am now silent production. So
That's fantastic.
you
John.
guys
And
get back on with
Not
it.
only does he set up our show again for us, but he also hosts it. And
Exactly.
then on top of that, he actually then manages to remind me what I was talking about 30 minutes ago, which for an old guy is like gold dust, because I don't actually remember what I had for breakfast this morning or what I smoked 10 minutes ago. So really, thank you from the bottom of my heart, John. That's fantastic. Yeah, I was talking about as a commentator, if you only listen to the good stuff, then you're only listening to your friends. If you only listen to the bad stuff, then you're probably reading Twitch chat or Reddit. Ooh, burn. But really, as a commentator, if you want to improve, then you do one of two things. You either have very thick skin, or alternatively, you listen to your peers. Listen to people like Chris and John and Tumba and Totalbiscuit and all the other guys that have spent years and years and years perfecting their art, because those guys will spend their time. I know they do. I know I have. I know plenty of other guys who spend hours sometimes talking to people on Skype and MSN and IRC and ICQ and God knows what else, giving people hints and tips. And recently, Pansy, an English female caster who happens to be very good already, but does have some rough edges on her. I'm not talking physically now. Careful, lads. See, that was a sexist pun there, but she won't mind that. But I did give her a load of grief, and I absolutely slaughtered her in a nice way, but told her where she was going wrong. I think she appreciated it. So, you know, people need to do that a bit more often.
We're still talking about eSports, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know what goes through your
Yes.
brain, old man.
Exactly.
Okay, I was just
John-
checking.
Dirty old man.
John had a follow-up question, which I think right when we went off the air, which was he was asking me if I ever critique any of the clients, and I would answer that as only if they ask. I don't, or if I feel like it, you know, there was something that needed to be addressed, but I don't presume to be. The one thing I am good at is being a fan and giving the honest truth. So if I think that it was shit, I'll say it was shit. I have no problem telling anybody that that was a shit performance. And I haven't had to say that yet, but
Lies. You've messaged me plenty of times this year.
Well, yeah, this is true. But you know, you have big shoulders and you're old, and I know you'll forget.
Okay.
And you only remember what you want to remember and hear what you want to hear. So it's not that damaging. But what did amaze me was, again, it's funny because I'll ask for feedback from people who I wouldn't expect would need it, and there's this sort of this on the other end. people that are still coming in and like John said, think that they can just make a quick buck or whatever, or feel like, they kind of can just leapfrog ahead of everybody. They don't seem to care what anybody says. And maybe that's why some of them get to be successful. I don't know.
Yeah.
But critique is so very important because esports is still growing right now, and there's only a handful of people that are really, really good at what they do, including players. So
Well, I mean, I think I wanted to make sure we had enough time to kind of segment over to just talking a little bit with you about managing players. And the main thing I wanted to ask you about was, do you plan on managing more players other than White Raw? And secondly, how do you feel, what do you think the role of teams are right now when it comes to the grand scheme of managing players? And are they necessary? We'll just throw that question out there.
Again, I'm going to go backwards. I'll start with your second question first.
Yep.
Yes, they're necessary, for sure. I mean, Axiom, for one. You have to have these teams kind of pop up just to give great talent an opportunity to shine. And guys like, TB and, of course, his wife, Jenna, coming up and being able to do that is fantastic. So I think that just shows right there absolutely necessary.
But how is that different than just the players dealing directly with sponsors through you?
Okay, a lot of ways. So we primarily don't specialize in sort of a lot of the hand holding that has to go on with the team, such as booking airline flights and a lot of the stuff in terms of managing the day-to-day career stuff. We sell inventory to mainstay sponsors, so that's our job, is to manage the business aspect of it. So with players, it's a little bit different. We are going to be bringing some more players on over the course of the year. We have some contracts out currently, and I think people will be a little bit surprised. And some might scratch their head as well, but it's not always about having to grab the most obvious talent. Sometimes, we need people that work. That's what we need first and foremost, is if you can work, then we can make it work. You know what I mean? And I think that esports has gotten to a point now, in my experience, from looking at non-endemic sponsors, that they don't necessarily care if you're winning championships. If you can carry the product, if you can talk, if you're articulate, if you can get a little bit of buzz about yourself, it might not be the most important thing to go ahead and win a Codas GSL, championship as a foreigner. There can be money made regardless. So your question's a good one, though. It's been one that, the team business model is very, very tough. You see mainstay teams go through rough patches, feast and famine, and it's so difficult. A friend of mine wanted to start a team, and I said, why would you want that headache, really? I mean, it's a lot of work, it's thankless, and your chance of success is low. But on the other time, it's very rewarding, and it's, who wouldn't want to be a part of an esports organization, even if you're not being able to win every tournament, just out of the passion. And I think there needs to be some focus on some of the teams that are kind of below the mainstays. The mainstays have a lot of work to do. Obviously, there's like the Yankees, right? There's EG, and I think they figured out a great way to market their brand and to recruit players to sustain the brand over time and attract new money while doing so. But even at that rate, the business model is a little bit tricky, right? Because you're always depending on finding the next deal or the next player, and there's a whole lot of work that goes into caring for your entire roster, just as with us. But there are the differences. I would say is, Chris, there's a lot less of the day-to-day management and a lot more of the exploration of new deals.
So with White Raw, then who does all the day-to-day stuff for him?
So I think this might be partially an age thing too. I think when you get to a certain age, really you want to kind of handle a lot of your own, where you're going to go, when you're going to go, how you're going to get there. And we can help with that. I mean, certainly we can facilitate that. If it's about getting flights, we can do so, and we do that as well. I mean, we had some issues getting Tasteless back to Korea, and we will, obviously aid in that however possible. But and we don't necessarily put, a lot of time into the hand holding of getting somebody A to B to where they need to go to. That's sort of on them. And we'll facilitate it financially or make the calls we have to, or have somebody make the calls to get them there. But a lot of it's just nuance. I think a lot of teams have figured out that they are agencies or should act a little bit like an agency. And in terms of being able to find deals, I think the trick with teams is, I think players will never really appreciate the work that the teams do. And teams have the people that run the teams have the tough task of having to, drop certain players, retire certain players. You're only one sponsor away from disaster, it feels like, at all times, things like that. So, one, they're kind of underappreciated, and then at the same time, from the top down, they get grilled for making the choices they do, which really nobody has a right to judge. It's their business, literally their business.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
for me, it's not so much just how, I guess, the public views the teams, with just the moves they make and that sort of thing. It's more from a business standpoint, from a money-making business standpoint, right? The teams right now have all those things that you're talking about, all those plane tickets and just the daily management that you're talking about. I feel like those are the fees that make these teams not profitable. And with you in having a management more so service, right, where the players actually pay you for your service, it seems like a more logical business model to me. And that's kind of that's kind of why I was asking you that question and what your views on it.
Well, I think that. So right, let me back up for a second too. StarCraft teams don't make sense on the surface, right? Because I liken StarCraft a lot of ways to poker. It's an individual sport. It's not really a team sport. Now there are team leagues.
Except for Pro League.
I get there's team leagues, but it's still based on an individual, one-on-one sport, right? So I feel like a lot of the players can get together, share strategies, but they don't necessarily have to be under a team moniker. And I think we're eventually going to see a shift sort of toward that. And I also feel like teams are exactly where they need to be right now. I can't believe like EG is sort of they've openly given out like the playbook for success, and other teams just I don't know what they're doing with a lot of their time.
There's a couple of other teams in Europe, to be fair, that are doing it like that. SK have been doing it pretty much the same way for many years. Fnatic have another big team that have done it well. And for me, the biggest team that have been successful in the last 5 years, and I wouldn't even say following the EG model, they've very much blazed a trail of their own, but it's very similar to EG's, is Dignitas.
Yeah. I got my Dignitas armband.
If you look at the rosters and how many players, I think Michael told me the other day there were 63 players on his roster.
Holy smokes!
That's pretty amazing to have managed a team with 63. But again, he's not really. I mean, yes, they were a team, but Alex Garfield makes no bones about the fact that EG is not a team. It's a marketing company, and therefore it's no different to EMG really. It's the same kind of thing, but they just use their own marketing and it benefit from it themselves. So I agree with Tumba. I think in the future, if you think about the tennis model, I hate the whole sports analogy stuff, but tennis is as close as we're going to get to 1v1 StarCraft, I guess.
Yep.
No one plays for a team in tennis. They might play for UK or Spain or America from time to time in the Nations Cup or whatever it's called, Davis Cup tennis, but no one really cares about it. What they care about is the 4 Grand Slams throughout the year, and none of them represent a team, not one of them. So I don't see it going too dissimilar to being similar, something like that.
Well, I think though too, like a difference between like EG and EMG would be once you go to EG, you're part of the EG machine, right? You're part of that. And this is not good, bad, or indifferent.
No. But that's their marketing strategy. It's for their team.
Exactly. I admire everything that Alex has done for EG and a lot of the players and everything. The difference though is we look at each individual on a case-by-case basis, and then we will go and explore opportunities for that individual. And I think as esports matures, you're going to start to see a hybrid model take over. So one thing I'm excited about in 2013 is working with the teams. And I had a team owner once say to me, "I don't know if you're my best friend or my worst enemy.
Exactly.
I haven't figured this out yet."
Exactly.
Right? And I get that, and I understand the paranoia, and I understand being nervous and scared. I totally get it, because I've had other team owners offer equity shares in their team, all kind of stuff. It was funny, but the point is, it doesn't have to be all that dramatic. Actually, what it boils down to is we can do one-off deals. We have the flexibility to do so, and we have done a couple that are going to be coming out here really, really soon that are going to help all of esports. Everybody in esports is going to benefit from one deal in particular that we did here recently. Teams are going to, all the different teams, well, not all the different teams, but some of the different teams are going to benefit immediately. All will benefit to a small scale. And then once, if it's successful and it continues on, eventually I think you will have every single team benefit from a certain initiative we did. So that leads me to believe in the future, we're going to have more of a hybrid system of, sort of like a hub and spoke, where you've got EG and they've got all these different deals going on, and maybe we can plug a couple of those bigger deals in if they make sense. And of course, we're not just limited to working with EG. It's any team, if the opportunity sort of fits correctly, then we'd love to work with them on different situations, different deals. They don't necessarily have to be clients.
Well,
how soon
go ahead,
is
John.
this
Go ahead, John.
initiative going to happen? Because I'm curious now. You got me.
Yeah, well,
wondering what this is all
so
about.
the paperwork's done. So to give, without saying what it is, the paperwork's finished, and there is no telling, how long it's obviously with somebody that is taking a leap into esports. So it's going to take some time to punch up, all of the materials that need to be done. But it's my proudest thing that I've been a part of yet in esports, I think, and it may seem to some like it's a little thing, but I think to those that get it, it'll be an aha moment for everybody, that it's like, wow, this is really going to be useful to everybody. So we felt initially I of course give credit where credit's due. This is all Brian's idea, and Brian saw a lot of sort of obvious ideas for esports that applied in poker that he used previously, and something that can help the entire scene grow. It was sort of we always look for the win-win scenario, and this was one of those situations where it was I think a win-win for everybody.
What that means is we're going to have Tobias on here in another 6 weeks, right?
I'll be honest with you guys. Yeah, it would have been much better. This was the worst time to bring me on the show.
Well, you tell us now after like 2 hours. Get the hell out.
Exactly.
Like everything interesting that's about to happen is going to happen over the next few months. So
Tobias Sherman, killing
that's what we do. We try to
esports.
get you to say stuff prematurely on this show. That's
I know, and there's so much. There's times
He's like a tease,
I'm like,
isn't he?
I can't say this. I
That's what
can't
he
say
is.
that.
Slasher just tweeted it, I bet.
Yeah, right.
Slasher already knows.
Big
Slasher
news.
knew this deal was happening before Tumba did. You know that, right? Slasher had
did,
this
actually.
inside line on this. He already knew.
Right.
Well, you guys have to
Tumba
play the
didn't even know
slasher
this was
game, right?
existing last year.
You have to
I
essentially
know
feed him as much false info as possible and see what he'll report. It's kind of like a
Right.
drinking game. It's like slasher bingo.
That's-
It's really quite good.
Slasher
really-
bingo. That's exactly what we
Slasher
play.
bingo.
CTV's
That's
on the same.
Fine. Yeah, slasher bingo. That's a
That's
Yeah.
true.
good one. That's a good
True.
one.
Hey, somebody just asked a question. I know it's not question and answer time, but they wanted to know how would somebody like Stefano benefit more with working with you or working with EG? I mean, what could you?
Wait. I can answer this.
Good question.
I can answer this. I predict Tumba will say Stefano could earn more money with the MG than EG.
Well, it's a great question, and it's sort of, I mean,
Right.
it depends on the timing of the career, really. So I think that using Stefano as an example, EG has given him a great opportunity to shine while refining his individual brand to fit EG. So I would it may be tougher to work with certain individuals than others. Not saying Stefano would be hard to work with in particular, but I'm thinking of a few other individuals in my head. But to answer the question and not dodge it, listen, we will be able to offer opportunities infinite in theoretically, right? In other words, we don't know. It could be 0, it could be 100, it could be 200. deals we could bring to any given player. It could be 5, but the point is, I think it comes down to, do you want to be relegated to a salary, or do you want to roll the dice and say, I'm confident enough that I can carry these brands on my own? And it's no secret. I mean, we've seen players like Grubby do it, and White Raw, who aren't particularly on a team. So I think that goes into sort of, again, there's going to be like this hybrid model, I think, where we'll work in conjunction with a lot of the teams to help, because I really feel they are important in explaining what esports is to non-endemics. But I don't think teams have figured out their own business models yet and what works right. But I think the question a player has to ask himself, whether it's going to be with EMG or not, is, do I want to have the security of a salary and be limited to that salary, or do I want to go ahead and say, no, I can roll the dice and I can afford to get my own deals, and then the opportunities are, whatever they are.
Your own deals with help from you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you see sponsors wanting to deal with teams more, or individuals? Because for me, in a way, like, I would think sponsors would want specific people. And so instead of having to just kind of take the whole pie, right, and having it doesn't seem as efficient, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, it's always about relationships anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a team or a person. It's always on the relationship in marketing. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Tobias?
My self-experience has been, you're a breath of fresh air, because I can tell you where your client is failing or not living up to expectations, or what we anticipate he would not or she would not do, in over the course of a potential relationship, or even during a relationship. So essentially they can disclose to us, because we want them to, hey, what would you like to see improve? How can we work with that? So it's really about, again, case-by-case, custom tailored basis. And then we can go back to the client and say, okay, look, here's where we need to improve. Here's what we have to do, in that regard. So I think that most of the companies I've talked to have been like, this is way better than having to deal with an individual, or I've heard a lot of them say, quote unquote, kids, because a lot of the, like I said, we've done some deals that aren't with just clients. We've reached out of that, and we'll do one-off deals with other entities, other companies, teams, whatever, what have you. And, some of these sponsors have to deal with, some kids, some younger adults that don't get the full business aspect yet.
Yep.
And a lot of them are tired of having to do that. So it's been a bit of a breath of fresh air. And I think that would go for teams as well. I think that, they'd much rather deal with a team manager than a player directly.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really any question about that, is there? I mean, it's fairly obvious that the reason we don't see a lot of personal sponsorships is that you can look at any talented player and then say, is this player actually business-minded enough to be able to deal with this stuff? And more to the point, does he even have the time? Because I can tell you this for a fact, the Mrs. runs Axiom, which is a small team, and yet it devours the majority of her day every day, 7 days a week. And that's a team with 3 players on it. And that's a team that currently is sponsored by 2 individuals and will hopefully be sponsored by many more over the course of the next few months. So it would make perfect sense for a sponsor to deal with either a team manager or, ideally, the team marketing manager, which is something that we don't really see a huge amount of. It's rather odd, really, because the discussion you've had over the last 20 or 30 minutes has been entirely right. It's a case of teams treating the business in such a way that is not conducive to actually getting sponsors interested in it. A team is a media organization as much, if not more so, especially in the StarCraft 2 scene, than it is a competitive organization. You need to be able to give sponsors ROI, and pretty much everything in StarCraft 2 esports boils down to the ability to do that. And if you can do that, then sponsors will be interested in you regardless of your results, as long as you can keep people interested in your team. And you can definitely see why an individual player would want to go to someone like Tobias and EMG if that organization is saying, we can get you deals, we can deal with all of the bullshit, and we will just let you play, and then the money comes in for you, and here's a bunch of opportunities. And it actually really grinds my gears that there aren't enough teams offering those opportunities to their players in the first place, not going out of their way to find these deals and then have them directly benefit the players themselves. Let's say Axiom gets 10 new sponsors in the next 2 months. which is, of course, a conservative estimate. But let's just say they got 10 new sponsors. And we got a bunch of money. And what exactly are we doing with that money? Well, obviously, we need to pay the players, but we're already doing that. So we fly them out to events. Well, they're already qualifying for them. And 2013 is going to be more qualifications for events than any year we've seen so far in SC2 due to the whole system between MLG, DreamHack, and IEM and all that other stuff. Yeah, and of course GSL as well. So where does the money go? Can you incentivize a player using those deals? Well, you should be if you're not. Because what better way to get a player more interested in being more outlooking and more outward in his personality, to stream more, to provide sponsorship ROI, than to provide the player with a direct benefit to that? And quite frankly, if teams aren't doing that and they have the ability to do it, then they're stupid.
Yeah,
well said.
That's true. Yeah, well said.
I'm not disagreeing with that. There are some other serious issues with your particular channel, though, John, I have to say. Firstly, it's not my keyboard.
It's mine. It's mine.
It's not mine. I use a stealth keyboard.
Jesus,
I'm using the desktop keyboard for the first time. Like
my keyboard, this is true story now, is actually converted ZX Spectrum.
Oh, I hear Jen in the background, I think.
Team management intervention.
Well. Let's have a six-way.
Why did you allow those guys on our channel? On stream.
And the other thing is, someone mentioned Duke Nukem 3D, first ever esport. God damn it, Quake was first.
Quake was before 3. Oh yeah, Quake was before Duke Nukem.
Quake was first.
I'm gonna rip off your hinge on your throat. Oh gosh, I still have Quake 3D, the latest one, on my shelf, unopened because.
Do you know what? I need to go and get something because I've been many sidetracked now. Side issues, that is. As many of you know, I'll be moving to Germany next week. Oh my God, what the fuck have I done? Anyway, and because of that, I'm having to empty my entire house. Now, whilst I've been on air, I've had several text messages. One is for, do you still have the lawnmower for sale? Yes, I do. And the other one's for a fridge freezer to be picked up tomorrow, so that's all good. But whilst that has been going on, I've been packing stuff, and I've been emptying boxes. Now, true story. You've probably moved a few times, you guys, over the years, okay? Yeah. And when you've moved, have there been at least 2 boxes that have moved with you that you packed at some previous address but then never opened, and then came to move again, and you went, oh, look, there's those 2 boxes.
Yep.
I've been meaning to do I should open them, but you know what? I won't. Well, there are 2 boxes that have been with me since I moved to Cardiff in 1997.
Oh, God.
And I haven't opened them. And they came with me to Cardiff, then they came back to Chichester, then they came to Worthing, and then they came to this property. And I thought, you know what? It'd be daft just to take them to Germany. Let's open them and find out. I'll be right back. Talk about something else, and I shall show you what I found, because it's gold, honestly.
If there's animals in there that he like packed away and that are dead now, I'm gonna
Oh my God. Oh my God, that would be classic. Oh man. So, you know, we've been talking obviously about teams and individuals, right? And I think, you know, one of the things about, you know, particularly StarCraft 2 esports is we have like this dual model going, right? We have this individual kind of sport model, and then we have this team model with, especially with Pro League, you know, really being, you know, kind of coming to StarCraft 2 now and being prominent with TL and EG, obviously entering Pro League and all that stuff. How much do you think that plays into anything in regards to what we've just been talking about?
Okay. All right, here we go. Are you ready for this?
Wait. Let's see this first.
Yeah,
I have to see this first.
Okay. So the first thing I found in one of the boxes was this. Okay, can you see that?
Is that a soccer ball?
Hold on.
That's Championship Manager
Soccer ball.
97-98.
It's a footy, is what it is, Chris. It's a bloody footy.
That's right, man.
Football, sorry.
Right, so that was the first thing I found in the box.
Holy
The second thing I
cow.
found was this. Oh my God. IndyCar Racing 2.
Crap.
The first
You
simulator
could put these
I
on
ever bought.
eBay and make
I
money.
know. These are mint condition as well. The other one is Sensible World of Soccer 96-97.
Yeah, 3.5.
And then we have the 2 Piece de Resistance. Okay. First off, we have the original box version of the Holy Grail.
Oh, that's awesome.
And finally, last but not least, John is going to wet himself when he sees this.
I already did.
No, wait for it.
Oh yeah, I have that.
Original
Oh,
boxed
yeah.
RTS.
It's still boxed?
Annihilation.
Is this still have a wrapper on it?
Oh yeah, babies.
What? Really?
And
What?
those
So you
5
just
games
didn't
were
play
just
the
among-
game, or what?
They
didn't
they
even
were
open
about no. It's
Okay,
it's
was
a
there, I was like,
stored
it looked like there was
copy of a
cellophane
game
on
you
there.
already played. Yeah, because if you remember, they came with the CD inside as well. There was no real need for a giant box, but they did. They came with CDs inside. Honestly, I found 20 games like that in those 2 boxes from 96, 97 from when I moved. It's just
Jeez.
it's unbelievable. I was just absolutely blown away by all those mint condition boxes. It was nuts.
Sure.
So a little trip down history lane for you, I thought would be fun.
They're about 5 megs a piece in size.
I think Quake originally was 8 meg.
Yeah, exactly.
It was on the CD.
I think it came on 6 diskettes. I believe.
Yeah, 6,
Yeah.
3 1/4. Yeah,
Yep.
3 1/2.
Three and a
not
half.
5.
I remember.
And IndyCar racing actually. Let me see if I've still. Is it? I don't know if it's actually in now. I think I took that one out.
Those
Yeah,
football
I
manager
think
games.
IndyCar
are
racing
still
was on
played.
2 of those. The championship manager one. Yeah, well, let's have a look. Minimum specs: MS DOS 5
Oh,
5. DOS 5, yes.
or higher. Or get this: Windows 95 with correctly configured MS DOS mode. Minimum CPU: 486 DX2 or better.
Oh my god.
8 meg of
Oh,
RAM.
that
However-
I was in high school when that was my computer.
16 meg to play more than 1 league at a time.
Oh my God.
40 meg of hard drive space. 40? Or 65 to play 3 leagues. A Visa compatible SVGA card, an MS-DOS mouse driver, a double speed CD-ROM or faster, and supports all major sound cards. That's extraordinary. That's the player glorified spreadsheet.
there was
Oh.
only one sound card. Sound Blaster was it, man. That was it.
All right. Before we get the questions, let's take some questions from the viewers. Get some questions in here before we call it a day. So, any of you guys that have any questions for the 4 or 5 of us, including our god guest, Mr. TB here.
I'm not really here.
Go ahead and ask on the stream chat.
This isn't water, by the way. I'm sort of minorly celebrating.
All right. Anybody see any questions?
Is that even good, Paul?
Mm.
Is that good?
It's not.
that
It's not
tequila?
as good as the gold, because it's silver, which is the cheap stuff. But it's all
Yeah.
right.
Silver. Silver's not the cheap stuff, man.
Well, it is compared to the other stuff I buy.
Yeah. Well,
It's about
it's true.
$10 in your money.
$10 in my money.
Okay, here's a question.
Oh.
Will the introduction of a team model promote more creative team-based tournaments?
I think it goes back to what Paul said.
Yeah.
StarCraft is there are league there. You look, there's going to be instances where you have Korea versus the world, where you have team leagues. But at the end of the day, back to his tennis analogy, doubles tennis never really took off, right? It was always the 1v1 that everybody wanted to watch. So while there may be different creative league options, I think at the end of the day, and I'm very entertained by the team leagues, mind you. I think it was very exciting, especially at IPL, to watch the run that Stefano put on.
Mhm.
But and it's a different way to watch, which is cool. But I still think 1v1 is always going to be the
I mean,
main
let's
focal point.
Well,
Well,
even,
let's
even
like
when
that
you call it a
free-for-all.
team game, it's still 1v1.
well let's
Yeah.
It is
They
what
don't
it- yeah, it
actually
is.
play 4v4.
But the
although
free for
that-
alls though this year, the free for alls that tournament events, I think IPLs was probably my favourite. But the free for alls have been fun, haven't they? I mean, I've really enjoyed them
And
from
it-
an entertainment point of view.
and
But no one takes them seriously.
Well, no.
Right.
Why would they?
Spectators or players.
No.
And that's for me. That's like the doubles in tennis. No one really takes mixed doubles seriously. I'm
Because
sorry. they
no
just
one
don't.
takes
That
2v2
makes
seriously either. I mean, the main problem
Right.
with the format itself is not that it is 2v2, it's that it's completely unbalanced nonsense. Like, StarCraft
Yeah.
2, basically every extra player you add into the game makes the game less and less legitimate because it was balanced around 1v1. Even
Yep,
2v2 is a cheese fest. Going any higher than that, it's ridiculous. Not to mention how absurdly
any higher than
difficult it
that?
is to broadcast.
well, I mean, we're talking we're
That's
talking
half
we're
the
talking
fun,
about
though, John. Come on.
I mean, we're talking teams like, League of Legends teams, but I mean, I mean, so to get back to teams, I mean, we have to remember that in Korea, Pro League is what made it huge in Brood War, right? I mean, that was what was on TV. That was what everybody was watching. So that's what I mean. In a way, I think that's why a lot of StarCraft 2 has been modeled from a team standpoint after what was successful in Brood War, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm starting to believe, though, having watched these free-for-alls, that Blizzard hired the Muslim to balance out free-for-all play.
dude, it was. Was it the Muslim or was it Hyun that was? Well, it's Hyun's
It's
back.
probably both.
It's
probably
Hyun's
both
back
of them.
That, I mean, that was what was most talked about, right? Was the back rubs during that whole thing for NASL. So, all right. Let's see what other questions we got here.
There was one more.
I'm moving to Germany, by the way, for those that asked. I'm taking up a position with ESL in 10 days from now, 12 days from now. Sorry.
This is a good question, and probably for all of us, because Tobias will have some insight into what sort of personalities are making bigger moves and stuff in the communities. But what competitive communities, are, basically probably what game titles, I imagine is what he's asking, do you think will make a bigger name for themselves in 2013 than they did in 2012? So which game titles or communities will make a bigger push than they did in 2012?
Dota 2, I think, is going to be.
Yeah, we had this question last.
I think Dota 2 is going to be a huge push. I think that nobody understands really where Dota is. I feel like Dota 2 is and that's not a slight against League of Legends, but I feel like Dota 2 is more StarCraft-ish than LoL is. So I think that a lot of the SC2 fans will dig Dota as well. And the key is the fact that since it is still beta and you still have to pay for it, once that goes live on Steam, I mean, how many gamers have Steam, right? They're all going to be exposed to that game. Which is fantastic. So I think just out of the sheer fact that it'll become free to play for everybody that has Steam is sort of an obvious answer, Dota 2. StarCraft 2, I think you're going to see a breakout player, maybe not in terms of wins, but sort of popularity and more on the scene will be Pig from Australia. I think he's super engaging. He's really has a lot of fan interaction and is exciting to listen to, commentate, as well as watch play.
Yeah, it's funny that you should mention the Australians, actually, because they turned up in force at MLG for once, because obviously it's very expensive for them to do that, and they did incredibly well. And as you mentioned, Pig is a fantastic commentator. He's a good player, and the Australians have a fairly unique edge over pretty much everyone else, that they have ready and reasonably lag-free access to the Korean servers, which in theory should allow them to get to a very high level, assuming that they have the right practice regimen and the right attitude. And we very well could see a surge of Australian players. The Australian scene, by all rights, could be better than the European scene by a significant margin if they happen to really take it seriously.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's funny, actually, isn't it? Because it's almost ironic that, I've known a lot of Australians and New Zealand players from, 2006, 2005, actually. I think even Flo was playing Unreal Tournament from Australia. And was reasonably successful. But they've struggled because they're so isolated. They don't get to play all the big tournaments. They don't get to fly everywhere. It's expensive, as TB said. And unfortunately, it's almost like they're cut off from the rest of the world, except for once or twice a year when we let you come and play with us, and then we'll kick your asses. And then they all go back, and they've had their asses kicked. But what I've noticed is that the players that go back, they've had their asses kicked, kick everyone else's asses back in Australia again, because they've just had that experience of, just one game maybe of just being, wow, I've just had my eyes open completely. And I hope that helps them being able to play on the Korean servers, because that is totally different to every other game that they currently play and have played in the past. And really, I'm not slating the Australians, but they've had mediocre players and mediocre teams in the past as well, but through no fault of their own. I mean, what I love most about esports is the globalization of it. I love to see Americans playing Canadians, who play Koreans, who play Australians, who play New Zealanders, who play Chileans, who play Brazilians, who play Japanese guys, who play Chinese players, who play people from Europe. I love that. It's so cool. And it'd be nice to think that we're shrinking as a world a bit more in esports, and that we can have more Australians and we can have more New Zealanders in there.
I mean, they have such a healthy scene there. I remember Testosis did Australia, right? They did WCS Australia. And I
Yeah.
remember them saying that was one of their favorite tournaments of the year.
The
It was a
fans
good one
are
to watch
very-
too.
Mhm,
Yeah,
it
the
was.
fans are very engaging. The fans are super into it, which helps the overall energy and feel. I think, and I think what esports really needs right now is the casters need help telling the stories, and part of that is the players need to take some responsibility and take that weight and get. It's not all about what happens with the mouse and keyboard. We've seen MC do these fantastic sort of stage annex that people
we
like
talked-
Fireback, right?
Timo!
People like
there
Fire.
needs to be more drama in
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
personalities.
Yeah, and I mean when.
Go ahead.
No, exactly. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. That was the point. It's just
Well,
they
we had
need
talked
to
about
do that.
we've talked about this before. I mean, and I had too. Is that coming from the Quake community? Trash talking was just part of life, and now they call it, BM or bad manners in StarCraft 2. And everyone's so, they're just so touchy about it. I'm thinking, no, we actually need more of this.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
need
Go
more
back.
drama. We need
and
people
down-
to trash each other and
Well,
show true passion.
yeah,
to a
show the
point.
passion, yeah. But go back and download any of Cooler's demos from back in the day, from a Quake match, and you'll see that his broken English Russian, he flames with the best of them. And,
I mean, look,
Oh, I mean, look
he
at
does what we call
look.
trolling now, and it was laughed at back then. It was considered to be that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it should
What a
be
cool
because
guy.
another with conventional sports, if you look at it,
Same
on the
thing.
field you can have good sportsmanship, but when you're asked a question by a journalist off the field, you're more than welcome to go ahead and speak your mind on a particular player, or even a coach. And there's a lot of drama and fines. Those fines don't matter to those players one bit, and it just helps the spin so much, and it helps
but it's
the
not
media
even-
machine.
Yep, it does.
It's not even off the field though, is it, Tobias? It's
Well,
on
now,
the
no,
field.
it's
I mean,
on the
if
field.
you
I
play
mean,
if you play top level sports, as I've been very lucky to play in the past, you'll find that actually, there's always a bit of banter between players. I remember playing as a defender against a couple of really quick strikers, and I said to him after 5 minutes, "You won't be running like that in 5 minutes from now." And he said to me, "Oh yeah, what are you going to do about it?" And I slid my my heel down the back of his heel and said, "That'll be harder next time if you go past me." And it was just a bit of banter, I'm giving him grief.
Yeah, well,
and
I
then
mean,
he
brutal,
said, in his
brutal.
mind, I
No.
mind fucked him because he was then going, shit, I don't want to go past him because if I go past him, he might hurt me, and then I don't,
Right.
I don't want to hurt me. So, and then he backed off and he started playing deeper, which meant I was able to push up, and it was all just a mind fuck, really. And that happens all the time in professional sports. Not they don't mind fuck them, but
Not
they,
even professional.
that
I play
banter goes
soccer.
on all the
Well,
time.
I mean,
all the
but-
time.
mean,
Every
the-
weekend. And
The tournaments
Yeah.
are trying. I mean, the tournaments are trying to get them to say a few things before they start a match. But
Stefano
there's-
MC during the match was
okay,
fantastic.
yeah, okay. See that's MC just gets it. You know what I mean? Like,
but most
Well,
of us
Stefano
it's-
does too. Stefano
it's the-
was like, "This is going to be easy," or whatever he said. It's in the crowd, the energy in that crowd. I was sitting front row. I think Mick Scooby Bear and Grubby were next to me, and we were watching that match, and it was such a good feeling. Like even that the banter was going on,
I
no
mean,
matter who you
it's,
like.
It's playful banter, but even Stefano needs a catalyst, right? And we just don't have enough people to initiate like that sort of thing. And even from the Korean standpoint, it's kind of nice seeing Parting just be so confident, in some of in the way he holds himself. And a lot of people think that's disrespectful and stuff, but I actually think it's kind of refreshing.
It's just
We
bit
have a
fun.
lot of
I mean,
problems with that, don't we? This whole
Yeah.
disrespect nonsense.
Mhm.
Yeah, no. I mean, the thing is that it needs to be. There's a difference between disrespect, lack of respect, and a bit of fun and a bit of banter. And a bit of
Right.
banter, as far as I'm concerned, it's all good. It's all healthy. It gets into each other's minds because some people take banter the wrong way. I mean, there's a couple of I won't name them because I think it's unfair, but there's a couple of very sensitive StarCraft players at the top end who I know are affected by that kind of thing a lot. And if their competitors knew that, I guarantee you they would
They
exploit
get
it.
right into their
And-
head.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Damn
because they
right.
would want to get in their head. That's part of the bloody game. When
Gamesmanship.
you play a sport or you play an esport, part of the deal isn't just what you do on the screen. It's about what you do in there as well. It's 10% in your brain and whatever it is in their brain as well. And that needs to be talked about more, and it needs to come out more as well. I don't think it's bad manners. I think
Well,
it's
it's not.
perfectly fine.
It shouldn't be suppressed, and there certainly shouldn't be prominent people within the scene actively going out of their way. And if I were to give an example, Lone Star Clash We had Crank dancing his stalkers in one game. I believe it was against Naniwa. You know, again, a player that we know can be tilted at times. He's all credit to him. He has got a hell of a lot better lately. And not only in his play, but also in the way that he actually approaches the game. And we had a certain well-known Protoss player basically go off the handle on Team Liquid and say that I was horribly disrespectful, and the guy was a Crank as a child. It's like, you know, bitch, this is the guy who's been through his military service, is incredibly responsible, and is a Brood War pro. I don't think you're in any position to be criticizing him there. And even if you were, you shouldn't be, because this stuff is just a little bit of fun. I was in the crowd when that happened, and they freaking loved it. And that is the kind of stuff that we need in StarCraft 2 eSports, because people have got to be coming home from these events and telling the people that they know, whether online or real life, this is a good time. You want to come to these events because you're going to see some great stuff. This is fun to watch. This is not just like watching a video game being streamed online. This is a social experience. This is a community. This is a competitive tournament environment. The atmosphere is electric, and all of this stuff contributes to that. And the sense of fun, and as Tobias has pointed out over and over again, stories, super important. Super important. In fact, it's the only thing that matters, actually. It really, really is the only thing that actually matters when it comes to esports, that there is an intriguing storyline somewhere, whether it be because of skill, wins, losses, personal drama.
Rivalry.
Yeah, rivalry.
All of those things happen. Yeah, all of those things combine together to make it a story. And part of that is the whole, well, you know, he said this in the last game between these two, which meant that this guy felt he lost the game and felt he had bad manners. Well, that's the frickin' story, dude. That's what you need to be talking about from the moment this game kicks off.
Yep.
Because depending on, it doesn't matter which way it goes, whoever this guy wins or that guy wins, something is going to have a result of the at the end of the fact that this was a rage thing that happened 2 months ago or something.
Yeah, I mean, so here's a question for you, John, and you, Paul. Like, when it comes to storylines, I mean, you need background information. So, I mean, either you're just literally scouring Reddit and TL and everything, like nonstop.
Jesus Christ, I can't tell this enough or as many times. For anyone that's out there who wants to be a commentator, who wants to be, you know, a caster, if you like, or a shoutcaster, whatever you want to call it, and you want to commentate on video games and you want to be good. The key to success to start with is preparation. If you prepare everything as much as you can prepare, and I'm talking like hours and hours and hours and days and days and days for a big tournament, but if you prepare to the absolute maximum, I guarantee you won't need 90% of it. But the good news is the 10% that you use will be fucking tremendous. And that's what matters, because that's where you pick up the storylines from. It's where, you know, when things like Baby Night does well, and he's not done very well before offline, he's only ever done well online, that's a story. That's your story. You found that, you've seen the guy's done really well online. He comes to WCS Europe, and in my mind, as a host, not even as a commentator, but as a host, I'm going, right, so if I get this guy goes through to this particular knockout, it's like, Jesus, he's in the quarterfinal. That's a story. So for the first time ever, he's made quarterfinals online. Can he make it to the semifinals? Is the new story.
Yep.
And so on and so on and so on. And you knock that on and you use it. So you use every little ounce of information that you get about players. It could be fun facts. It could be stats. It could be something about their family, whether they've lost a member of their family or they're working for someone, or, you know, they lost money last year. Who broke their elbow last year and then came back?
Probably
and did really
the Muslim. If it was break anything, it's probably the Muslim. I would imagine.
I don't think it was. The Austrian.
He didn't break a bone this year. I don't think. I don't think he did.
I don't want to curse him.
This year? Are you sure it went last year? He broke something last year.
Year before last. Yeah. So year before last, the Austrian. Oh God, my brain's gone bad.
Austrian?
That's what age does for you. Yeah.
What race?
Mine's gone blank. It doesn't matter. The point is, he broke his elbow in a riding accident, and it took him a year to recover. So that was the story. So the first time I get to talk to the guy and interview him, what am I going to talk about?
Monchi.
Yeah. I'm gonna talk to him about breaking his elbow and how did he come back from that. And here he is at the top of his game, doing really well in Europe. So there's your story, and I found that one little nugget on Liquipedia, which for StarCraft 2, by the way, is fucking phenomenal. The guys that add stuff on there, I know it's multiple people, but it's brilliant. And I know other games have it as well. But anywhere you can find information. I talk to players a lot. I mean, surprisingly, talk to them and find out what's real and what isn't real, and find out what they're interested in. They'll tell you stuff. It's amazing.
That kind of goes back to what I was saying about the leagues and not focusing on how many streams they can get up at one time,
Right.
but rather the gifts that you guys possess, being able to entertain. The reason I was well received as a caster initially, and I said I feel bad for anybody that had to listen to me, was because I had Adebisi next to me, who was like Encyclopedia StarCraft, who would tell me everything, and I was just a proxy for him. That's all I was. I would get on there. I'm like, the SDC, what's his story? He's like, oh, just graduated or just got out of military training. This was in Orlando when he had to play Huck. I'll never forget. He gave me the whole rundown on STC, and I'm regurgitating it like I've just done all that homework. When really it was just Adebisi, and I just used my sexy voice. But anyway, my point is this. You guys don't have, and I agree. Look, John obviously prepares. He gave a very great speech at IPL. And, the work that he did after this terrible school shooting on, the real story behind the anti-hero and not making that. And, for anybody who hasn't watched it, please go to Totalbiscuit's YouTube and look it up. He did a fantastic job on that. Obviously very well prepared. And like you said, that 10% is great. But I think when you guys are doing the tournaments, there's no way you know what's going on the floor. There's no way you know those. And I feel like take the resources out of these leagues, get rid of the streaming and all that, because all that takes a team of people to monitor and watch and make sure it's up. Take those resources and dedicate it to people on the floor that are talented writers that can help get you your own Adebisi, right? Where they can feed you the information that you can make sound good and sexy and work into the plot. And then you add that with your own little X factor in there and your own talent. And now you got something that's, historic.
Yeah.
And you see it starting.
Lone Star. Lone Star was just
that's just
for StarCraft. But it would still have been awesome to have some sort of ticker or to have and it's nothing because Totalbiscuit was there, but we could have had people just dedicated to feeding him information that he wasn't getting for matches that were happening off stream. And that could have increased the value of the production all the more.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. Most of that information, we get it from Reddit. And we get it from Team Liquid. And because if I'm sitting behind a casting desk at MLG or Lone Star or any other tournament, I do not have access to that kind of information unless production has provided it for me. And in almost all circumstances, that never happens because production is focused on production. And you're right, there is actually no one on the floor gathering that information. And MLG is actually the worst for this because they have so many games going on. And their solution for a while was, we're going to stream everything we can by bringing community casters in. And that's not a terrible idea. I mean, that gives tons of coverage, and it gives community casters a chance to get on the big stage and do something cool. And it gives all sorts of options for people to watch the players that they like. But
it breaks the story.
Exactly. It's really hard to follow the story. And this is a criticism of MLG, and I criticize them all the time, and they know it. And it's about the notion that we find out about a story while we're casting, and we try and tell production, we want to follow this story. This is a story right now, and we end up casting Maximus Black versus Trimaster. And no offense to Maximus Black, but that should not have been a streamed match. And there are stories which commentators want to follow, and we don't really have the option to do that. And I think maybe it just seems like tournaments that have multiple games going on at any given time and that have to make decisions as to which games they put on should be deferring to the casters to a greater degree than they currently are as to which games should be going on stage and which stories should be followed.
Yeah, or at the very least consulting as well, because there have been plenty of
we don't get asked
tournaments that I've been to where actually we don't get asked at all.
Exactly,
We are, I'm being quite elitist, I suppose, but I think the collection of casters are the most important people in finding the stories because they know where the stories are originally. They know how things can develop. And for me, it's always about looking at the whole bracket and figuring out, before I even get there, if I know the bracket and I know roughly who might meet, I would always do a bit of he might get through there. And if he gets through, if those two meet, wow, I've got some juicy stuff on, brilliant. If you know that already, then giving that to the tournament organizer at the start is gold dust as far as I'm concerned, because it should be, without question, that should be the game that gets all the prominence and all the attention because you've already got the storylines written and it's part of a bigger picture.
But aren't at the big events like MLG, aren't there directors? I mean, aren't there people that's what they're supposed to be doing?
Yeah. So I can tell you how it works. Basically, each of the streams has a production team, which includes a executive producer. They are responsible essentially for making sure the stream goes smoothly, and they do a stellar job at just that. MLG is one of the best produced tournaments in the world because that team is there. The main problem is that team doesn't actually contain people that are necessarily out looking for stories. In fact, they're focused entirely on providing a good production experience and to make sure that the stream goes smoothly. And that's their expertise. Now, what they should, what I would hope that they would get in 2013 is some kind of support team that can be feeding them information. And then what the executive producer does is they relay it to the actual casters themselves. The casters are all looking out for stuff. I mean, what do you think we're doing in between games? We're straight on Team Liquid. We're straight on Reddit. Some of us are dumb enough to reply. Most of them aren't. And we read this information. And that's actually the best way to keep up with the tournament, because so much stuff is going on in this massive hall. There's no way we can get that information without having direct access to it on the internet. Yeah. But it would be very nice to have that. I think that's something pretty much all tournaments that are as large as MLG have to think about and to try and deal with. And I know that during IPL, the casting teams directly communicated with each other. And we actually told each other what was going on via Twitter and things like that, and via text message, just to keep each other up to date. So it gave us talking points while we're waiting for the next game. I think almost every tournament could really do with emphasizing that, because it goes back to the point in the first place. The storyline is what matters, and if you can't provide the storyline, then your tournament's not interesting. And the best tournaments, the most successful tournaments, have always been those that have actually managed to pull that off, whether deliberately or simply by accident.
Right.
Yep. WCS Europe, and I keep coming back to it, but it was my favorite event last year that I was involved with, and one of the main reasons is because the stories were all through the weekend. Honestly, they were all the way through. They were linked back to the previous nationals. They were linked back to the grassroots stuff. They were linked to matchups. We were lucky in a way, because the matches that we had were really good, and that always helps as well. If the matches are great, then throw away pretty much every bit of preparation you've ever done. But if you haven't done it, you can guarantee it'll be a terrible match, and you'll have to fill for hours. So again, it always, for me, as a broadcaster, as a commentator, it comes down to preparation, and I can't. Sometimes I've had hosts say to me, "Yeah, come out. It's just a one-day thing. You won't need any prep." And I think, no way. There's no way I'm flying out there having done no prep. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
It's not a very wise thing to do.
Well, it gives you the confidence. I speak very personally. It gives me the confidence to know that what I'm talking about is right, and it gives me the confidence to know that I can do my job properly. And if I haven't prepared, I'm very nervous, and therefore, if I'm nervous as a stage host, that's awful. I mean, that would be absolutely shocking. So to stop me being nervous, I have to have confidence. To get the confidence, I have to be prepared, so I prepare.
Well, guys, why don't we wrap things up? I think it's been an awesome talks today, but
do we have 2 more minutes? There was
sure.
a question that was asked several times. It's actually a really good question. I want to get everyone's opinion on it too. Say his name right, Adelond.
Oh, Adelon. Yeah, Adel. He's a long time.
Yeah, his question is, with EGTL and the big-time Koreans committed to Pro League and the GSL, GSTL in 2013, how do you feel about foreigners and mostly, I hate using the word foreigners, but how do you feel about non-Koreans and mostly non-Korean only tournaments for the majority of 2013? I feel
awesome about it. Awesome. I think it's a fantastic.
Same here. I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for it.
More the merrier. It's almost like, trying to think now, it's a bit like Barcelona and Real Madrid being invited to the English Premier League and playing in it.
Yeah.
That's how cool it is. I don't know whether you'd like that or not, but I would. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. I think that you do need to have a balance in foreign tournaments as to how many Koreans actually go there. And obviously this is not something that we should be restricting. Because that is absolutely ridiculous.
And the ball.
It's affirmative action for foreigners, right? Let's not do that. That sounds like an awful plan. But I think that the best tournaments are ones that are not necessarily overly stacked with Korean players, because I think when the last foreigner gets eliminated, unless the person playing happens to be Flash, then what happens is you actually get a marked drop in views, and I've seen this across the board on most tournaments.
Round of 8.
Yeah, there's plenty of
Very,
examples.
very true.
Plenty
Look
of
at
examples.
IPL4. IPL4 was a perfect example.
Yeah.
Oh, no. There's a better example, which was WCS Grand Finals, Global Finals.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
because
It actually got less viewers for the final than we did for a quarter final in the Europes.
That's that's very common actually. That's a lot of MLGs, most of the MLG finals get get less views than the quarters.
Well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a big drop. Yeah.
Massive,
Definitely.
massive.
Well, I think one of the other parts of that question was for North American. Well, let's say for the MLGs that are going to be happening here in North America, we're less likely to see some Koreans coming over now because they're going to be more committed to what's going on over there. Does that hurt what's happening here?
Well, if I'm honest, I don't think there's going to be that many Koreans that are so dedicated to Pro League that they're not going to come over and do that. It probably means that a lot of the Kesper guys will not be at these events, and that's a bit of a kick in the teeth. You know, it would be nice to see Jaedong, it would be nice to see Flash and Fantasy and some of the other players actually come over, because that's not even just a novelty, that's just holy crap, Flash is playing. And there's a reason why MLG Dallas was the most successful MLG this year by country mile, and was actually the dominant foreign tournament this year in terms of views. Like, it crushed everything, and I do mean everything in terms of numbers. And that was because Flash is an awesome player to watch, and that storyline was great. And I think
he's a legend too.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no, I
he's-
want to see as many Koreans come and invade these different countries, because let's face it, that's what they've done for the last 18 months. Come and invade all these countries and try and take all the money from all the tournaments. I get sick to death of hearing, oh, it's not fair, the Koreans should stick to their own tournaments and let the foreigners win some money. Well, no, it's
the foreigners
time
should
for the
earn it.
foreigners to step the fuck up. That's what time it is.
How long have we been saying this though? Because it's so
A long time.
You can't just look at what you perceive makes a great team house in Korea as a foreign. I mean, it's not just about buying a house and filling it with players either. And you know, there's so many factors that go on, and so much nuance, and it's sort of in their culture, and really, it comes down to motivation. I talked to an ex-Brood War player, foreigner, that was just like, well, I'm just not motivated. And if you're doing it for the money, almost forget about it. Like, it's in something else, I think, has to motivate you to be a successful foreigner. However, I feel like with a lot of the seeds now in Code S going to some foreigners, I do feel like, and that we've been saying this for a while, the gap is closing. I hope to see Stefano become a Code S champion. I'd love to see a foreigner champion because it makes for great story. And, you know, it's about time that I think once we have one or two foreigners that can actually accomplish it, it won't seem that hard, and maybe inspire some other players. And maybe look at the way like Michael Phelps inspired new swimmers to come up. And it's sort of the same thing, right? Like, we need that foreign inspiration where he goes in and does kick some ass in Korea to a point where he's not only respected, but is a dominant force. And I feel like if there's one guy that has the right attitude and I don't want to say is naive enough, but just fearless enough, it is Stefano.
Oh, yeah. He's just incredibly gifted too. I mean, he's gifted.
Is the right word,
He's also
very
confident.
gifted.
He's unshakably.
It's incredibly French.
No, it's just his ability. I mean, it's hard to explain, but his ability his understanding of the game and how the dynamics of how it changes, it's above everybody else. I mean,
but it seems like it's effortless for him, which is scary.
so
And you see it in sports too. You see it a lot in sports. Like, you watch a golfer like Ernie Els when he was really good, and his swing was so smooth, everything looked effortless, right? And I can see that in him, to where it just doesn't seem like it takes a whole lot.
Did you see it before? I can't remember which tournament it was. I was watching an online tournament with him and he dropped a game to a player he really should never have dropped a game to, and then he went on Twitter and he absolutely ranted like mad, and then he went back and he just absolutely butchered the next player, and it was almost like he just went, you know what, I'm just going to turn this light switch on and go into a completely new gear.
It happened at MLG.
It's a Home Story Cup as well, wasn't it?
It was
recently, Home Story Cup.
Was it?
I think it pretty much was. Yeah,
I might have missed that, but like I was telling John before, and maybe you guys that are watching the show, but it happened at MLG, or sorry, IPL during the foreigners versus the Koreans. Like, I remember him tweeting that he, he was tired and he really didn't care about the tournament. But after seeing all the tweets and all the fans really, really wanting him to win, he just kind of turned it on. And you can actually see it in his eyes.
Yeah.
Like you can see him just really trying. And that's the Stefano that like I want to watch. I actually will skip things to watch.
I actually I had a front row seat obviously at WCS Europe final where he lost the first game in the grand final, and he'd come on and he was super cocky and he was really confident and he just looked like nothing was going to phase him whatsoever. Then he got his ass handed to him and he suddenly there was just like a
focus. Yeah.
And then the next two games were just like, you are dead.
This is not
and
even my final form.
Yeah, exactly.
What the hell is going on?
We need more of those. We need like 5 more. We need like 5 more Stefanos.
We do.
And
least.
eSports will be just
Yeah.
fine. Like
There's-
really.
And
I'd say there's at least.
We've only got
thrown a couple more Idris too.
Well, this kind of leads to the point where you guys are saying that we should just let the Koreans enter every tournament. I disagree with it a little bit because I feel like
Really?
I feel like we need
You want to be the best, play the best.
No. High level, yes, I believe in that, but I feel like we need a little bit of a sandbox so that we can build confidence in some of these young players like Snoot, like Baby Knight, and those guys. I mean, Europe does a great job of it. These European tournaments don't have many Koreans in it. Like, so you can literally get to the semis and get to the finals and have to beat 1 or maybe 2 Koreans and you can win a tournament. When you play these MLGs and IPLs, you have to beat like 7 Koreans, to win. Like top level Koreans.
Then step the hell up.
No.
Well,
Yeah.
I agree.
No, I'm saying like that's fine.
If that's how it's going to be, then that's how it has to be, isn't it? It's a bit like winning the World Cup and saying, well, shit, I've got to beat Italy, England, Brazil, and Holland to get there. That's hard.
Some of those players, they're playing club. They play clubs like when they're not playing for their country. They're building their skill. They're building their talent. When you're getting crushed by Koreans over and over, these guys lose confidence. They get discouraged. They just.
Well, then they don't deserve to be good players.
What you're saying though? Isn't what you're saying kind of like smurfing though? Like you're saying you want them to smurf down a league so they can.
No,
the thing is, there's no league for them to smurf down into.
I would like there to be an iterative progression.
Chat is hitting on England right now. There's no. We invented the bloody football game, all right? So don't start.
That we did. We only let you guys win it to make sure that you gain the confidence in order to continue to play the game. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any opponents.
Koreans. We could have been like Korea for football, and we could have just held it all ourselves and come to your countries and just dominated you. But we don't. We're much more considerate.
We're benevolent. We're very polite. That's our nature.
I'm just saying, the European scene has a lot more online tournaments. They have a lot more things that facilitate growth for the players.
Growth for European players.
North Americans don't have jack, dude.
He's not wrong, actually. Like the problem, I see exactly what he's saying in the sense that essentially when you go to one of these big tournaments, it's like playing the World Cup over and over and over again, but not having the Premier League to practice in, or even like the First Division or whatever. You don't have these. I'm not even going to call it Little League because that would be horribly insulting. But you don't have mid-level online leagues or anything along those lines. The actual online tournament scene right now really sucks. I mean, a lot of them just aren't happening anymore. I know Playham's going.
Well, there's
through
reasons for that
baiting,
too.
Mr. Clark. Stop baiting, Mr. Clark.
It's coming. I assure you that it's. I mean, we had it going, and then it just stopped. But it will be back. I know that. It will be back. There will be lots of online tournaments soon.
Yeah,
so
we just need more of that. I mean, and the problem with these online events as well is you get the same problem. Koreans will happily play in them because they can slap the foreigners around and get $100 at the end of it.
Right.
And, that's actually fine for them, and they're willing to do it. But I don't disagree with what Chris is saying, that there isn't actually enough local competition, as it were, especially in the US. EU just happens to have the convenient setup whereby it's expensive for Koreans to go there.
Yes.
DreamHack doesn't fly people over, although that's going to be changed in 2013. So,
all right. So, TB, would you agree with me that we don't have the right organisation in esports yet that supports the whole?
We don't have any organisation in esports yet.
Thank you very much.
Ouch.
And good night. I'll just throw you a fishing rod, John. Right, and then if you just attach yourself to it.
Not a problem.
All right, guys. gonna have to start wrapping this one up. But
Sure, you don't want to talk about cricket and England being the best at that,
well,
or
We're not bad at rugby either.
You know, it's like
or rugby.
What was
Yeah,
the line? What was the line
rugby's,
from?
rugby's good, by the way. It's like NFL, except it's played with well, it's played by men with odd-shaped balls.
Yeah. What was the line from Fish Called Wanda? A Fish Called Wanda. Oh, you British think you're so superior. Oh, you think you're so superior. Don't let me start listing what America invented. America.
American.
America.
Y'all
Without the A.
See, you're
Capital
looking
A.
at America invented it. Sex, America invented it. Chinese.
No, dude.
America invented it.
If we're going down the invention road, okay,
Oh boy.
then instead of being England now, we'll talk about the UK, which includes a little place at the top of England called Scotland, all right, which invented the radio, the television, and
Who
electricity.
do you think invented
light.
Scotland? America.
Golf.
America.
MURICA.
Cheers. Stop speaking not America. Cheers, by the way, to Scotland for inventing the world's hardest game ever. That is just.
Oh, golf. Yes.
But yeah, so we've
Yeah,
just
most
this
frustrating.
train
Never
is officially
seen it.
derailed completely at that
I've seen it before. Go and
So
check
it
out
always happens.
Robin
yeah.
Williams on golf on YouTube. Go and check it out. Robin Williams on
The
golf.
one where he says, "Why do you think they called it a stroke? Because you feel like you're having a stroke
You're
playing
not gonna
it.
have
It's
a
so
fucking
good.
stroke by the time you fucking hack the ball.
So good. I've seen it. Yeah, it's
And
great.
not only we're going to put the ball, we're going to put a hole 500 yards away. We're going to put a tiny flag to give them hope.
Yeah. So good.
Fantastic.
All right. So why don't we do
All right,
some
think good fun.
shout outs? I mean, big thanks to obviously Tobias and for coming on being a guest, and John for rescuing us. And
Not me, but
it was
John.
John.
Bain.
Little do you know, this was my like stealth way of getting you on the show.
You only had
We
to
planned it.
ask, you idiot.
We talked about
Just
it.
send me an email, for fuck's sake. It's like, I've heard I'm very difficult to contact online.
Really difficult.
Okay, so
Just ask
okay.
him now.
No. I mean, so it's. I mean, John, I have asked, but unfortunately, the missus has denied us in the past, and I just
I'll be
haven't. asked.
busy. She needs me to make money so we don't,
I know she does.
financially
I
implode.
totally understand it. And I love Jen to death too. So. Yeah, but huge thanks to you, and hopefully we'll have you on again as our God guest again. We're gonna have to label you the God guest. and obviously John Paul always being a great co-host. But let's do some shout outs now. Tobias, you want to start us off?
Big shout out to TB
Yes.
for doing the secret he's part of the secret that we were talking about before, and you guys
Oh.
will get to see that. So
Hey.
big shout out to that
boy.
secret and his team, by the way. Of course, his wonderful wife, who is the engine behind that. And not to take anything away from you, John, but come on.
Oh, I don't do
It's
shit, don't worry.
Come on.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's awesome.
Big shout out, of course, to John Clark and ReDeYe. I really, it's great to get on the show with you guys. And of course, Chris, thank you to you, man. Big shout out to you for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Who should we go next? John, you want to do something? Or
Mine are always short. Thank you for all those that tuned in. Thank you for all of the Totalbiscuit fans that actually stuck around and were like, "What the hell is going on here?" And then found some entertainment value in what we were doing. So I appreciate all of that. And those that followed us from our first channel over here, we appreciate the patience. And obviously, thanks to Tobias for coming on. Good conversation. Sometimes it's you just hear again through Reddit and Team Liquid and stuff, kind of what's happening with the company, and it's nice to have somebody from the company on to fully explain kind of how things are working out. And it was a good conversation today for sure.
yeah, definitely.
Mine's pretty easy. Obviously, thanks to Tumba for coming on. It's been great having you on. And TB for rescuing us. You're a star. John and Chris, always a pleasure. I'd also like to thank Luke Watson for buying my car today, because that means I don't have to take it with me to Germany.
Nice.
And I'd like to thank Natasha for buying my coffee table. Actually, she didn't buy it. It was free. I gave it away. And to the 2 Ukrainian guys who came to collect my TV unit earlier, I'd like to thank them as well.
What is this, Craigslist on your phone or something?
And are you sending me
Yeah,
those
the guys have
boxes?
been texting me earlier. What's that?
Are you sending me those game boxes then later too?
No, those game boxes are coming to Germany with me.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
okay.
man.
Let's check
Oh,
it.
watch out, man.
I'm
There's
not
some
revealing
violence in
where
those
I've
game boxes. That might be an illegal import. Watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
I'm worried that I'm going to get stopped at the crossing, and there's going to be some sort of gaming enthusiast who looks through the box and goes, "Oh, original Quake. I think I'll keep this. It smells of dope. Yeah, we'll have to
It
impound
smells
this."
dope.
And then they'll pick up Total Annihilation and they'll be like, "Yeah, our dogs have decided that this may contain traces of weed. We may need to impound this." Other than that, I'm not worried.
Awesome.
So thanks for tuning in.
Well, thanks viewers for checking it out. Obviously, all the Totalbiscuit viewers, I appreciate you guys staying and watching. And our show is typically on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central Eastern Time on twitch.tv/ChanmanV. So come and check us out. We're usually after the Too Good Show. Or the Good Show. I keep saying Too Good Show. The Good Show.
It is the Too Good Show because no one else gets a word in edgeways.
Well, that's a standard situation whenever Too Good is
Exactly.
actually involved in anything. So
Yes.
That's true. That's very, very true. But next week, I just said Tuesday. Next week, we're actually going to be doing it on this same day, Thursday, because I will be at CES and I will not be able to do it. I've tried doing this show. I've tried doing the show from a hotel room, John, and it was terrible. Oh my god, it was like a nightmare. So I'm never doing the
been
show.
there, done that, got the T-shirt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So well, next Thursday we'll redo this at the same time, and
Who are we having, Chris?
we're most likely going to be having Paul's favorite,
Most likely.
Richard Lewis on here, and
It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Do you know, all joking aside, just as while we're ending this, I'm also going to thank him as well today for reminding me that I am a complete arsehole at times.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
awesome. All right, people. Peace. See you later.
Peace.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.